I came across a little piece of research, and I've heard this before about specific ones. I don't know what study this is referring to, but you can probably find it if you go search for it. I know it's true in so many areas of life, in the kind of natural world. But here's what it said: in the 1990s, scientists grew trees in a sealed, like the perfect environment, right, like the biosphere. And they couldn't figure out why the trees fell over before they matured. So you got these trees growing this perfect environment, and they couldn't stand on their own. They would fall over. Well, here's what they realized. They eventually realized, and here's I'm quoting here from Uber Facts. They realized that the perfect growing environment, okay, this biosphere thing, lacked something. You know what it lacked? Wind, stress. They said the wind provides the stress that ensures that the trees grow strong enough to do what? To support themselves. You want me to read that again, or do you get it? Parents, do you get it? This is a big one I've been seeing a lot around lately. Parents rescuing their kids from having any friction that they got to deal with, any struggle, any pushing forward, any making things happen. That's the wind that makes us strong, makes us able to stand up like the trees. And we go through various, trials and have to fight our way through it. You know what's happening many, many times? We're being strengthened. It's a good thing. Now, what am I not saying? I'm not saying that if you get abused and taken advantage of and, hurt and abandoned, I mean, bad stuff happens to good people, right? That's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is when we have to fight our way through some challenges and develop new skills to meet those challenges. If we don't try stuff that we're unable to do, we'll never get past where we are. Think about that. If we're not trying stuff that we're unable to do, we'll never get past where we are because we're already able to do everything we're doing. Well, you want to do better, you got to do stuff you can't do. And what happens? You grow into it. It hurts. You stretch yourself. Same way you build muscle. Your arms don't get stronger without straining the struggle. This is all through science, the physical sciences. Same reason, if you've ever found a little birdie egg and you want to help the little birdie out of the egg and, oh, let's break them out and we can play with them. Well, what happens? They have to peck their way out of the egg to strengthen the neurological system and the muscles so they can survive in the outside world. Same thing as the trees. If you rescue a little birdie from struggle, it's not going to be able to live on the outside world. Just like parents, if you rescue your kid from every single, strain or not liking something or having to live with a limit or, work out a conflict or whatever it is, they're not going to be able to thrive on the outside world. And same thing with ourselves. If we shy away from the next challenge that's calling us to embrace it and work through it, it may mean some wind, guys. It may mean like face into a cold wind. It may mean having a difficult conversation. It may mean, setting a limit and somebody rejecting you for it. It may mean getting up earlier every day and taking an online course to make life work. It may mean putting your kid in a timeout and sitting there and have them, not be happy for a while and scream at you. A lot of different things that this means for different people. Sometimes for isolated people, it means the facing into the wind of being vulnerable enough to reach out and ask for help when you're afraid. Or somebody doesn't have good boundaries to finally stand up and say, no, I'm not going to allow that anymore. Or somebody that's hurting from a failure to be able to confess that to somebody that can. Those are cold winds in your face. But when you face those winds, what happens is you get stronger. I always talk about, the Bible verses, right? And I always say, one of my favorite verses was since you've been listening to me, well, there's only 80 million of this. But one of them is out of the book of Romans where it talks about, you know, like struggle and persevering through struggle produces character, and character brings about hope. It makes us strong. I did a word study on the Greek word there in that verse about struggle. And you know what it means? It means a situation that you are confined to, that there's no escape from, that you have to work your way through, work your way out. See, there's no escape. It's like a timeout. I don't know why I keep coming back to timeouts, but it's kind of like this. We don't like it when we have to develop a new ability instead of the circumstance change. Well, what happens? I remember, my kids, when I'd put them in timeout when they were, screaming toddlers, and I'd put them there and say, okay, well, you're, why are you here? I told you would be here. If you did that, you did that. Now you're here. Okay, so here's, I'm gonna set the clock, and if I can have some silence, if I can hear silence until the little buzzer goes off, then we'll talk about it. And start screaming. Well, sorry, buzzer starts. We're gonna reset the clock, and you've got to use your words. I'm not going to talk to you if you're screaming. If you're screaming, I'm going to walk away. If you're going to use your words to tell me what's going on, then I'll talk to you, right? Or some variation of that. Different ages, different ways you do this. But the point is, they'd rather scream, but to step up and have to, okay, I'll stop, and regulate themselves and start to get self-control, they had to be in a situation from which there was no escape other than my maturing to be able to open the door to get out, to be able to peck the egg shells to get out, to be able to stand in the wind, to be able to stand. See, growth is about our increasing capacities to be able to deal with whatever is around us. It's not always demanding that everything around us disappear so I feel good again. If that were the case, who would ever grow up? I mean, I'd rather go back. Can you imagine being a little kid? Think about this. What There are people whose job it is to make you take a nap and make you eat. Are you kidding me? Can I go back to that? I'd love to have somebody devoted to making me take naps and making me eat. Now, well, see, back then, it doesn't sometimes seems like a fun thing, right? You got to step up and do these things, and then you start to mature, and then you start to be able to negotiate life. Well, when we can't get out of something other than growing into the capacity to get out of where we are, then, well, there you go. So, one of my favorite verses, book of James, first chapter says, consider it all joy when you encounter various trials, knowing that if you persevere in those, then you're going to come out the other side. It says it's going to mature you. You're going to be more complete, lacking in nothing. I mean, if you go through, that's why a great boss will give you an outcome and say, here's what we want. Here's some thoughts. Go figure it out and then come back to me, as opposed to micromanage you. No, they want you learning. They want you growing. Because if you do that, then they can give you more, just like a parent, just like life. See, when we overcome our next trial, then life can give us a bigger problem. You want some bigger problems? Overcome the problems you got. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, think about this. When you're a toddler, what's your biggest problem? You're going to not spill the milk? Spill the milk, the day is over, you start screaming, oh, wow, that's a big problem, right? Well, why don't we learn how to solve that problem? Then you can get to bigger problems like how to negotiate with the salesperson for buying your first home. That's a problem. Bigger problem than spilled milk, but it's a problem that could lead to a lot of enjoyment in life or other kinds. See, the more mature we get and the better our skills get, we get to deal with some really, really great problems. To go solve homelessness or world hunger or suffering in another person or whatever. But we don't get there if we're asking life always to change, the circumstances to change to make me comfortable like I was before this problem came along. Well, now this problem comes along, and I love this phrase, immature people demand that life meet their demands. Say that again. Immature people demand that life meet their demands. They scream if circumstances don't change or you don't change like I want you to be. Mature people, on the other hand, they don't demand that life meet their demands. Mature people meet the demands of life. So, whatever the circumstance around me is calling for me to do, that I've got to learn how to come give a mature response to that circumstance, and then I'll get to the next level. Okay? So, thank God for some of the wins that come into our lives. They can make us stronger.